everyone, this is Lauren from Wearing History, and I am working on a 1940s coat pattern which is available in my shop. I've come to the part of making the shoulder pads, and I just wanted to give you a visual of how this works. So, you're going to need to cut 2 pieces of muslin, which are 7 inches by 7 inches square. You are going to want some batting. I have some nice cotton batting that I've had for ages. My mom's friend gave it to her when I was a little girl, and it's still in my stash because there's so much of it, but you can use poly batting, and you actually could probably even use wool roving if you wanted to. So I wanted to tell you basically how to put this together in words and in a video, since doing the pictures seemed like it would be a little bit more challenging to understand. Even though this is a simple process, it's something that might be better just seen in motion rather than in still. So I've cut 2 7-inch by 7-inch squares, and then on one square I've decided to draw a line which goes diagonal like this. Now when you put your shoulder pads together, it consists of the 2 pieces of muslin, the roving or stuffing or whatever in the middle, and then the other piece on top, and you're going to stitch through them and then cut them on the diagonal, and that's how you get your 2 shoulder pads. So instead of like doing all my stitching and everything first and then trying to cut a diagonal, I figured it'd be easier to give myself a guideline before I put the stuffing in the middle. So you're going to take your stuffing, and mine has been sitting, like I said, in the garage for a million years. So you're just going to fluff it up. Am I on video? There. Fluff it up a little bit. Make sure that it's just not compacted and lumpy, which can be a challenge if you're using natural fiber. Actually, the fiber that's not natural is probably easier, as it doesn't get as compacted as easily. So in the original 1940s instructions, it has you do your padding lightly around the edges and then denser in the center. And the reason for that is that because of these 1940s coats, the edge of the shoulders, as you might know, is called oftentimes like Joan Crawford shoulders or football type shoulders. They're very, very thick and dense, so that you get an exaggerated shoulder line. You want it to extend past your natural shoulders, so patterns of this era oftentimes can fit quite wide across the shoulders, wider than your natural shoulder line. And that was just what was fashionable at the time. There's different psychological or sociological reasons why people say that is. I'm not going to delve into that. Let's just make some shoulder pads. So I've put a light amount around this, and then I'm just going to layer on top. You want most of the thickness towards the center, and when you put these into your shoulder, you are going to actually extend this center part, which has the most stuffing, slightly beyond the shoulder seam, because you want the cap of your sleeve to be more full. You don't want it to collapse in on itself. Since it's not at your natural shoulder, it tends to collapse if it doesn't have a little bit of support. So just keep building it up. Like I said, more in the middle, less around the edges. And they want us to make this 3/4 of an inch thick at center. I have my handy clear ruler. I'm gonna kind of stick it down in the middle, and it looks like mine is about 1 inch. And I'm gonna call that good because I like big shoulders and things for the 40s. It looks really period. And when you press this, it's going to be a little bit more compacted. So smaller around the edges, and then build up towards the center. And then you're going to put this on top there. Okay, we're back, and we're going to be doing our stitching. For this, I've got a pretty long needle, And I've got Japanese cotton basting thread that I like to use when doing tailoring projects, but you don't need it. You can use any type of thread that you have. You might want to use double thickness. It's up to you. Just try it out and see what works for you. You can get Japanese cotton basting thread online from different specialty sewing shops. And it comes in different colors, but I like white because it's traditional and I like old-timey things. So here is, like I said, our layered bits. We've got the bottom, the stuffing, and the top. Now you are going to treat these as two separate halves. So you are going to baste one half and then you're going to baste the other half. You don't want your stitching to continue across the center, because if you were to cut this, you would cut your basting and then all of your hard work would be for nothing, and we don't want to do that. So start this by just coming up somewhere through the middle, and there are different ways you could do this. You could go around the outside edges first and baste it, which is probably a smart thing to do, but I'm just going to go for it. So I've come up through 2 layers and I'm going to just go in and out and secure this. There is no like super duper method to basting this. In the instructions you'll see it be a V shape, which is like traditional pad stitching, which is probably what I'm going to go for. So come up and back down. Now do a big wide stitch, go all the way in, grab it from the bottom, because you have thicknesses in here, come back up, and you've got 1 stitch done. Now do another big long stitch down, pull it through, and then come back up. Now when you do this, do not pull tightly. You want that space in the middle, and you don't want a puckered effect on the top of your shoulder pads. You are doing this just to secure the padding and the fabric together. It's not to like hold it tightly, it's just to create a sort of cushion that doesn't shift on itself when it's worn. Back down, through, and up again. Now it's going to be like challenging to keep it so that when you cut, you don't snip these. So don't get super close to the line. Leave yourself a little bit of a gap. And when you cut, just be mindful that you don't cross over on the other side. Down, up. Alright, now if you look at this on the back, you'll see I just have little pricks like that. That's just fine. I finished the center, and I realized that you might want to see how you make the V-stitches like you see in the old illustrations. Now, the way that you do that is when you get to the top here, I just did another tack across. You're going to come back up close to the top of the V, and then you're going to go back down, out, and wide. You're going to come up next to the top of the next soon-to-be V. I realize they're not actually V's. This cotton stuff tends to knot on itself, so if you see me fighting with a thread, that's why. Now you're going to go out wide again. Remember not to pull too tight. Close to the V, out wide. And I know that these aren't really very uniform. I don't care. No one's ever going to see this except for me. Out. Wide. And you can see that we're getting the V pattern. And this is my finished stitched shoulder pads. You can see I have one side done and then the other side done. I realized while stitching this that it is better to start at the center and work your way out, because you are going to have more to cover on top, which means that like over here it may end up shorter towards the outside edge, which is totally okay. That happens when you have a curve to go around, and since it's thick in the center, we are going to have a curve to work around. So now the moment of truth, I've got my scissors and we're going to cut down the middle here. Oh, I wanted to show you the back side. See all the little stitches? Just little pricks? That is what the back side of this pretty pad stitching looks like. And if you see right here, I've just used whatever muslin I had sitting around, which means that this was previously used for mock-up, and that means I'm actually saving money because I didn't have to buy anything for this. All right, so carefully cut through your line. Get some good scissors because this can be quite thick in the middle. And there we go. Look at your little slivers here of your nice thick shoulder pads in the middle and the nice thin edge on the outside. And now I'm going to show you how to cover these. If you are putting these inside the coat before you put the lining in, you don't need to cover them. You can just put them in just like that. But since I am making them so that they can go inside the coat and be removable, you will want to cover these in whatever your lining fabric is. Okay, we're back. And what I've done now is I've cut 2 lining pieces. These are going to cover your shoulder pads. I cut these 9 inches by 9 inches. If you remember, we cut our shoulder pad pieces 7 inches by 7 inches. So we want to make sure that there is extra in the center that will be able to cover the thickness of your shoulder pads. If you cut them the same size, you would have no seam allowance and you wouldn't have enough ease to go around the padding. So what I do when I cut these squares, since I didn't say it before, is I make sure that one of the straight edges is on the straight of grain of the fabric. That means that the other side is on the cross grain. That means that when you do your center, where we cut before, that will be on the bias. And that's important because you want the part that goes on the edge of the shoulder to be able to mold to the roundness of the shoulder and not be really stiff. So, straight of grain, cross grain. Now this is 9 inches. Like I said, these are 7 inches. And what I want to do first is I want you to test and make sure that it'll fit. So I put 1 shoulder pad on it, and then I'm going to fold this over. And it looks like I should have enough to have about almost ½ an inch seam allowance around the outside. The reason I want you to test this is because if you made your shoulder pad thicker or thinner in the middle, it may be either too much ease or it may be not enough. So you really need to test it and make sure that the 9 inches will work for you. You may need less or more. All right, I'm going to do part of this on the machine. The proper way would probably involve hand sewing the entire thing, but I'm a little lazy, so I'm going to do a combination of both. What I've done now is I have turned those on themselves to make little triangles. Here's the folded edge here. And I've sewn all along this edge, partially down this edge, back stitched. Come down here, back stitched again, stitched over to the corner and back stitched again. And the reason I do this is because corners are really hard to get smooth when you're hand sewing. So I figured by doing that part by machine, I would help myself out to make it not quite so difficult. Now, I misplaced my scissors. All right. So now that I have that done, what I'm going to do is clip these corners in so that we don't have a lot of bulk. And the other one too. And then I am going to turn them and press them so they look really nice. Okay, I have turned and pressed my triangles now. I wanted to note, because I forgot to before, that I used 3/8 inch seam allowance because, as you saw when I tested it out, it looked like I needed a little less than ½ an inch. Now, adapt your seam allowance as you need to be able to accommodate the shoulder pads. There's no real science to this. That's all kind of going by feel. That's why a lot of things are hand sewn in the past, because you could adapt things as you went along. But these ones, I ended up pressing these long edges. One side of this I left unpressed and one side I pressed, and this edge I did not press because you want that roundness for the shoulder pad. Now the moment of truth, let's see if this actually works. So you're going to put the shoulder pad inside of your casing, if you will. Alright. Make sure you get in there nice and good. Ah, it worked. There we go. So you can see that there's no crisp press right here because I didn't press that edge. So put both of them in, and then you are going to turn under this seam allowance here, and you are going to hand stitch that closed. Okay, now that we have our shoulder pads finished, we're going to have to put them in our coat. The way that you stitch your shoulder pads, you may find that one way is curving more than the other. In this one, it looks like if you see these two edges are pointing down a little bit more than if you look at it like that. That just has to do with the way that you hand stitched it, and you're going to want to not fight that. So if it's going down like this, you're going to want to make sure that this is the part that goes around the roundness of the shoulder. It'll look a lot better. So with the shoulder pads, this wide edge here goes out towards the arm, and this narrow part here goes in towards the neck. When you look at your coat, you want to take about half of this, stick a little pin there for an idea, get into your shoulder of your coat in your shoulder seam. Now this part right here is going to want to match your shoulder seam there. Am I still on camera? Yeah. All right. So kind of loosely pin that. Now this part, the thick edge, should extend about 1/2 inch beyond where the sleeve cap is. You're going to want that nice square 1940s shoulder, and part of that supports the cap of the sleeve because it won't collapse in on itself. It'll just look a lot better, and part of it is just to get that period silhouette. If you're not doing 1940s, you can alter this however you want, but to play around with it and look at what looks best to you. So here's my seam, here's my shoulder. I'm extending about 1/2 inch out, so I'm just going to kind of pin that for now. Now I'm going to smooth this out, and the point here at the upper part, let's zoom in a little. The point here at the upper part, you're going to pin as well. You don't have to go through all layers, just the lining to itself. Now here's the part that gets a little tricky. Since when you put something on the body, it shapes around it. It's not something that's 2-dimensional, something that's 3-dimensional. You are really going to want to put your hand in there and feel it around your hand. It's even better if you have a dress form that you can do this to, and then you can pin it that way. But since a lot of people don't have dress forms, I'm just making do as a lot of people have to do at home. So feel there, make sure that it's smooth, and sometimes you'll find that you will actually want to pin through the outside and grab the edge, and then check the inside and make sure that that's nice and flat. Yeah, that looks good. So the ease here, if you press it outward, is going to be less than it's really hard to explain this on camera. Just take my word for it. You're going to want to go with what looks best from the outside. So smooth it over the other side and pin that. Now at this point, go and try it on. Try it on, look in the mirror from all angles. If you have to, take a picture from the back and from the front and see if it looks like it's laying correctly on you. If there's any sort of puckering, or it looks like the shoulder pad needs to extend out or in from where it's sitting, do that now. And when you're done, you turn it on the inside and you're just going to lightly tack the corners of where it's supposed to sit. And do not go through all the layers, just go through the lining and just lightly attack it, and then that's it. You want to be able to remove these when you get it dry cleaned if you want to, so you don't have to worry about it being super secure. But that's how you put in your shoulder pads, and I hope this video was helpful for you. You can visit me online at wearinghistory.clothing or wearinghistoryblog.com. I'm also on Facebook as Wearing History and on Instagram as Wearing History. All right, thanks very much.